Hi guys, David O'Sullivan here, and in this video I'm giving you my review of Rogue One. Now Rogue One is the latest installment in the Star Wars universe and the first in a new standalone series of Star Wars movies. Directed by Gareth Edwards and starring Felicity Jones as Jyn Erso, the film tells the story of a band of rebels who are responsible for stealing the Death Star plans, which ultimately results in the victory for the rebels in A New Hope. Now going into this film I was naturally very excited. I mean, I'm a big Star Wars fan. Who isn't? You know, I'm not a crazy hardcore Star Wars fan. I do like the films, well at least all the good ones anyway. Obviously I'm not a fan of the prequels, but I am a big Star Wars fan. I do like the Star Wars films. I was looking forward to this, and to be honest with you, even though I love The Force Awakens, I was probably looking forward to this more than I was The Force Awakens, because even though I ended up really enjoying The Force Awakens and I thought that was a great film, I was more excited for this because I was more excited to see something different, to see a down and dirty, more grounded, realistic kind of war movie of a Star Wars film. And did we get that? Absolutely we did. I don't think this is one of the best Star Wars movies. I probably did like The Force Awakens more. It's hard to compare them. I don't like comparing them because yes, they're both Star Wars movies, but this was more a down, dirty, gritty, realistic war movie take on a Star Wars story. So it's kind of hard to compare, but I did really like this, even though I probably didn't like it as much as The Force Awakens. I don't think it was as good a film as The Force Awakens, but I still enjoyed myself and had a really good time, and I still thought Rogue One was a solid film. As I mentioned just a second ago, by far the biggest positive I had with this film is that it was a very different take on the Star Wars story. It was more of a grounded, real-world vibe to it, and I really liked that. It was like a war movie, but set in the Star Wars universe, and that is what I like so much about this film, that they really went for that tone, that vibe. Aesthetically, this was very different to any other Star Wars movie, because yes, it's similar kind of characters and locations and stories and concepts we've seen before, but it was told in a very different way and it looked very different. It was more down and dirty, more on the ground, more from the rebels' point of view, and I really love that, because as much as I love the big, more flashy, flamboyant, over-the-top Star Wars movies, the Skywalker saga, the Jedis and all that, what I love so much about this film is that it was the complete opposite. It wasn't all up in the air, flying around, up with the Jedis. It was more down on the ground, more with the rebels, more with the guys on the ground fighting this war from their point of view, and I love that. And it was really great how Gareth Edwards shot this film from their point of view. So when they're being attacked by the Empire, they're attacked by the AT-ATs, the Imperial Walkers, the Stormtroopers, it's all from their point of view on the ground looking up, and we were really put into their position. It really felt like we were with these guys on the ground fighting this war. And another thing I really liked about this film was the characters. I really liked the fact that there was no clear-cut good and evil characters. You know, all the characters in this film had grey areas. Obviously, apart from, you know, likes of Darth Vader, Krennic, those guys are very much bad guys, but everyone else, they were all in that kind of grey area. There was no clear-cut good and clear-cut evil. There wasn't all squeaky clean good guys on the rebellion side, and there wasn't just full-on evil villains on the bad side. I like the fact there were some characters on the bad side who weren't that evil, and there were some characters on the good side who weren't completely squeaky clean and good-hearted. And I really like that because it made it more true to real life. In the real world, in the war, you know, it's not as if everyone on one side's all good and everyone on the other side's all evil. It was more true to real life in that way, and not everyone was just good on that side, not everyone was evil on that side. Everyone was in a kind of grey area. Some of the good guys were doing kind of bad things. They weren't all squeaky clean good on the rebellion side. They had to do some kind of horrible things. I like the fact that there was a sense of desperation with the characters as well, because the Empire in this song is pretty much in control. They've taken over. They're about to destroy the universe with this super weapon, the Death Star. And the fact that the rebels in this song are really desperate. They're not, oh, woohoo, yay, let's fight this war. They're really like, it's basically like the Allies during World War II or leading up to World War II. They were desperate. There was a sense of desperation, a sense of urgency, a sense of terror with this. Like, the Empire's taken over. They could destroy the universe. And it was desperate times. And it was really urgent, and I really like that, because some of the other Star Wars movies don't have that, but with this film, particularly in the latter half, but throughout the film really, there's a sense of urgency, a sense of terror, a sense of we need to get this done, and I really like that. Also, speaking of the characters, I pretty much liked all of the characters. Some don't get that much screen time, some we could have spent more time with. Forest Whitaker I liked. I think he was good in the role. he really wasn't in the film that much, and also his character was kind of unnecessary to the plot. He didn't really need to be there. I kind of think that his character of Saw Gerrera was kind of just fan service. They put him in there just for the fans to go, oh look, it's him. He didn't really need to be there, but I liked him in the role. But for the standouts, really, Felicity Jones I thought was great. She really surprised me, actually. Not that I thought she was going to be bad, but I really liked her in that rebel warrior leader role. You really bought into her. She was really convincing, and she just shows how good of an actress she is. You're watching her and you buy into the fact that she's this hardened, battle-scarred warrior, this girl who's going to stand up for herself and, you know, take care of herself, and she doesn't really care about anyone else. She just wants to do what she wants to do, and I really like that. She becomes a bit more of a team player towards the end, obviously, but at first she doesn't really care about anyone else. She's going to do what she wants to do, and she's the kind of girl that's just going to do it and get the job done, and I really like that about her character, and she portrayed that really well. Also, Diego Luna's character of the captain I thought was really great as well, because he has a kind of through line throughout the film. He's almost a lead character in a way. I mean, Felicity Jones, Jyn Erso is definitely the central character. It definitely all revolves around her, but Diego Luna's actually got a really big kind of leading part in the film as well, and I think his character was really great. He's in a kind of grey area. We don't really know if he's completely good or there's some bad things to him, you know, what he's willing to do. He's in this war. He's been fighting this war for so long. He's not this squeaky clean good guy. He does some things. He takes some desperate measures and does some desperate things because it is desperate time, and I really like that about his character. And also the other characters, I think Riz Ahmed was really good as the pilot. He got quite a bit to do and I enjoyed his presence. And of course Donnie Yen was just such a badass. He was really great. The only character I think I would argue that we probably needed to know more about was Donnie Yen's psychic, the guy who was kind of protecting him, looking after him in a sense. He kind of didn't really have that much to do. We didn't really get that much screen time. We didn't really know that much about him, so he probably needed more time. But other than that, I really like the characters. I thought the characters were already well realised and already well portrayed by the actors. And of course K2SO the droid, probably one of my favourite, if not my favourite droid. He was just such a great character, and the humour from his character really worked. He wasn't there just as the comic relief. He was really integral to the plot as well, but he was also so funny. It was, every line he said was almost like a sure smash hit as a joke that the audience just found really entertaining and enjoyable. Every line he spouted out was great, because it was so funny, the fact that he was an Imperial droid but reprogrammed to be a good guy for the rebellion. It's kind of like Arnold in T2, in that he's a Terminator but he's reprogrammed to be a good guy. It was that kind of humour where he's an Imperial droid, but yet he's been reprogrammed to be all good and fight for the good side, and that was really funny. Alan Tudyk, I think, did the voice for K2SO so great voice acting there, and yeah, K2SO was just such a highlight of this film. By far the standout character, so funny. And also Darth Vader. I'm not going to go too deep into Darth Vader. He only has a couple of scenes, but both scenes are great. The first scene is a dialogue scene. It's a short dialogue scene, but it's really good. And the second scene, I won't say what the second scene is, but what I will say is that the entire film is worth seeing for just that scene alone. Oh my god, it's incredible. And it's the kind of scene I never thought I would ever see in a cinema. I never thought I would see the day where I would be watching a Star Wars film in the cinema, seeing Darth Vader up there on the screen doing that, and it was just so incredible, so awesome, badass. I loved it, and I want to watch the film again just for that scene alone. Also, this film worked really well as a standalone film, and obviously this is the first in the standalone Star Wars films, and even though it's very much a precursor to A New Hope, and it works really well as a precursor to A New Hope, you can watch this as its own standalone story and it'd be a really solid, entertaining and enjoyable standalone film. But at the same time, it's also really great as a prequel to A New Hope. It was really good because it was great as a standalone film, but yet at the same time it was great as a bridge between Revenge of the Sith and A New Hope. It continues on from where Revenge of the Sith left off, but at the same time it leads directly into the beginning of A New Hope, and I love that. It worked really well as a kind of part one to A New Hope's part two, because the way this film ends is just so great. It leads literally directly into the beginning of A New Hope, because one of the minor gripes I have with the first Star Wars is that it starts off straight away, yes, but you kind of like, well, hang on, what's going on here, what's the context, what's happening? It's kind of, we're in the middle of an action scene really. Darth Vader's pursuing the rebels, trying to get these plans, interrogating Princess Leia. You were part of the Rebel Alliance. But what the end of Rogue One did was that it gave context to the opening of A New Hope. Literally, Rogue One ends seconds before, pretty much, the beginning of A New Hope, and I love that, how it tied in. Everyone's saying, when you watch this film, you just feel like watching A New Hope, and I completely wholeheartedly agree. As soon as I left the cinema, I was like, I just want to watch A New Hope now. I want to carry on watching this. I want to go into part 2 now and carry on, see where it continues on now into A New Hope. It was just so well done. But I found my biggest positive with this film is the action. Seriously, this film has some of the most incredible action of any Star Wars movie we've ever seen. And even though I did like the rest of the film, the action was by far the best part, and as soon as the action sequences kicked in, the film went into a league of its own. It went up a gear, it really kicked in, and the action was just so utterly fantastic. It was enthralling, it was exciting, it was thrilling, it was dramatic. Honestly, all the action sequences were so great, particularly the third act. And even though as a film on a whole, I don't think Rogue One is one of the best Star Wars movies, as far as the third act goes, I think this is one of the best, if not the best, final act of any Star Wars movie ever. Seriously, the last 30-45 minutes of this film are absolutely incredible. It's worth watching for just the last act alone, and I want to watch the film again just for that last 20-30 minutes. It was just so great. What I loved so much about the third act was like, it was kind of like 3 action sequences in one that was just so tense and suspenseful as well. It was really remarkable that in the final act, in the final battle, the film was able to create so much tension and suspense and terror, despite the fact we know the outcome, and yet at the same time it's so suspenseful watching this final action sequence. Even though we know what's going to happen, it was great because it was like a Mission Impossible heist at the heart of it, set in the backdrop of a Saving Private Ryan-esque battle in the shadow of an amazing space battle up in space. It was so great, these 3 different things all happening at the same time. It was just absolutely amazing. As far as negatives go, I do have a fair few negatives. The positives for me outweigh the negatives, but I did have some problems with this film, things that I don't think were as good as others, and for me the first half of the film was nowhere near as strong as the second half. I did like the first half, I did think it was good, but for me the second half was much stronger, particularly the final act, whereas the first and second act for me were a little uneven, they were a little unfocused. By the time it got into the third act, around the halfway point, particularly the final act, it really kicked in and went up a gear. But for me, the first act and second act were a little uneven, a little unfocused. It was a little bit all over the place. Nowhere near as bad as, say, like Batman v Superman, for instance. It was not that bad, but it was a little kind of disjointed in terms of like, we go from scene to scene and it's like, oh, okay, yeah, and it was a little kind of trying to find its feet, a little bit all over the place. But like I said, by the time we got to that final act, or the halfway point really, from about the halfway point to the final act, all those problems were gone. And even though I don't think the first half was as strong as the second half, I still liked the first half and I still thought it was good. I really liked the story, I was really interested and engaged. I just don't think the first half of the film was executed as well as the second half. I don't think it was structured as well as the second half. I think it was much better executed, much better filmed, the latter half of the film, whereas opposed to the first half, it was a little uneven, it was a little disjointed, but it wasn't that big of an issue. Also, I've got a few nitpicks here, not massive things, but things that were a problem for me and did take me out of the film a little bit. There was a CGI recreation of a character in this film. If you know anything about this film or anything about Star Wars, you probably know what it is. I won't say who the character is, but even though the CGI was state of the art, probably the best CGI we've ever seen in terms of recreating a character, the Uncanny Valley is basically what I'm going to say, because even though the CGI was really good, you can just tell it's not real, and even though certain instances you can be tricked into thinking it looks real, your brain just knows it's not a real person. So every time he came on screen, you kind of get sucked out of the film a bit, because it just looked like a video game character, as great as the CGI was. And this is probably the best use of CGI recreating a character. You could just tell it wasn't a real person. It kind of sucked me out of the film a bit. Also, another nitpick here, not a massive issue, but the lack of an opening crawl. This film doesn't have an opening crawl, which I thought was really odd and doesn't make any sense. I know they want to distinguish it from the Star Wars saga films, but it just doesn't make sense not having the Star Wars opening title logo and the crawl. It just, especially since they had a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So going from that to just opening into the film straight away, it was kind of jarring. It was really abrupt, and it kind of set it on a downer from the get-go. I liked the rest of the film from that point, but it's like, oh, you know, it's setting it up for a big Star Wars opening crawl, and then it doesn't happen. It was really abrupt, really quite jarring. It was like, oh, okay, we're in the film now, alright. And also the title card of Rogue One, it looked really naff, really cheap. It was so bad, it was kind of cringeworthy, almost laughable. I don't know what they were thinking with a Rogue One title card. It just didn't look good at all. Again, it's a little bit of a nitpick, it's just the title card, but it didn't look good. Overall, Rogue One may not be one of the best Star Wars films we've ever had, but it was still an entertaining ride and enjoyable for both fans and non-fans alike. With engaging characters, an interesting and exciting story, and a final act consisting of some of the most incredible action we've ever seen in Star Wars history, Rogue One isn't without its problems, but it's still an enjoyable time at the cinema and definitely worth a watch. With all that being said, I'm going to give Rogue One 4 stars and say that Rogue One, definitely worth checking out. And there we have it, that wraps up my review of Rogue One. I'm not going to call it Rogue One, a Star Wars story. Sod that, I don't like the title. Star Wars Rogue One. What do you guys think of Rogue One? Have you seen the film yet? And if so, what do you think about it? Let me know in the comments down below. And if you like this, make sure to click subscribe to see more. But for now, I've been David O'Sullivan. I'll see you next time.